It's sweet, it's seductive, it is deadly. Tonight, the dangers of sugar. I think that sugar is the main contributing factor. Serious new warnings from serious people. The more I learned about it, the more it scares me. And also tonight, what the sugar industry has tried to hide. Strategies that I thought the tobacco companies made up back in the 1950s, actually some of those the sugar people have done even before that. When the Britain family goes shopping, like most Canadians, they try to buy healthy. Let's go up. But like most Canadians, they don't always succeed. Their busy meals have to be quick, and then they're keeping the kids happy. Okay, you want one that looks like half a moon, or you want one that looks like a full? A lot of what they eat is processed. They assume it's nutritious, but they are pay too much attention to what the food they buy. Have no idea how much sugar is hidden in it. Alright guys, I want you to kind of start telling me a little bit about some of the groceries that you got today. Richard Grill is about to have them figured out. Have you guys ever take a look at any nutrition labels or really paid attention? The label on Let's Quick cereal say 10 grams of sugar in 3.5 of a cup. But whoever just eat 3.5 of a cup, how many of those go in your bowl to make up your bowl of cereal? For me, I say 8 or 9. It's okay. That's a lot of cereal, as your press is about to find out. An awful lot of added sugar. So in your serving of cereal, about 8 of these servings, you are looking at about 20 teaspoons of sugar added of non-nutritional value. That's a lot. Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. What do we mean when we say sugars? Well, whether it's a white stuff you bake with or the brown stuff you sprinkling on your oatmeal, whether it's honey, molasses, syrup, or maybe a high fructose corn syrup you hot, there's a lot of that in things like pop. Chemically, it's all pretty much the same thing, and we do consume a lot. On average of this country, 26 teaspoons of sugar per person per day. That's 40 kilos of a year, the equivalent of 20 bags. That was sweetens of the product and spice the profit some of the most powerful and familiar companies in the world. The food industry is one of the biggest manufacturers in North America, nearly $1 trillion in sales every year, and it couldn't do without sugar. Sugar is one of the essential basic ingredients used in 99% of the processed foods out there. Former industry executive Prue Paley has worked for some of the North American biggest food companies. It's something that can try a lot of tests in product and a lot of appealing for consumers, so it's one of the basic building blocks. And make no mistake, the amount of sugar in our food is no accident. The food industry goes to great lengths to figure out what makes us crave a product. The exact combination of ingredients is called bliss point. You know everyone asks what is bliss point. Dr. Howard Mosky is a long-time food industry consultant known as Dr. Bliss. The best way I can do it is to give you an example. Do you drink coffee with sugar or milk? With milk. So if you add more and more milk, you like it. More and more up to a certain point where you like it the most. Then added a little bit more milk. You say, oh, it's too milky. And my God, and added a lot of milk and it's horrid. So it's Goldilocks. It's middle. It's the best one. It's level where you like the product the most. A Harvard-trained mathematical Moscow Squee used models to test people's reaction to different versions of a product. Once he found the bliss point, the product hit the sales. From soda pop to spaghetti sauce, his magic makes money. Everyone wants to sell just a bit more. How do you get that immediate increase in acceptance? Those in know realize you can add a little sugar. A little? The first thing to know is that 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon. So with that in mind, let's look at some products. It's no surprise Coca-Cola has a lot of sugar. 40 grams can is 10 teaspoons. But much of sugar we eat is hidden in foods we don't necessarily think as sweet. This oatmeal, 3 and 3/4 teaspoon of sugar in the bowl. This vanilla flavored yogurt, nearly 5 teaspoons in just a half a cup. You can find sugar added to bread, soup, all kind of condiment, hot dogs. This chicken dinner label healthy choices has 5.5 teaspoons of sugar in every serving. Is this results? There's no question as our consumption of sugar has grown, so have our body. Canada doesn't keep good statistics, so we've used American ones. And those start raise trouble question. Are we changing our evaluation sets? Here's a line showing our sugar consumption for last 50 years. Here's the number of people who become overweight and obese. Now look at this line. It's for scale cases of 2-type diabetes and this one disease of heart. Back in 18 and 90s, we used to blame a lot of those problems on dietary fat, but then we start taking fat to our food. Diet incidence of disease go down? No. So that's what a lot of doctors and nutritionists asking why. The answer according to an increasingly vocal group is sugar. Which were worse, sugar or the fat? Sugar 1,000 times over. Robert Lustig, a doctor, author, medical professor, and one of the leaders of anti-sugar campaigns. The fact is, our food supply has been altered and adulterated under our every nose and in plain sight over the past 30 years. In addition to treating obese kids, Lustig is a YouTube sensation. His lecture on sugar has been seen nearly 4 million people around the world, and he doesn't pull his punches. That's what's going down. The sugar's going up. We are all getting sick. You use words, you poison, you use toxic. Certainly I use the words. I mean them. That's a lot hyperbole. This is real deal. Everyone thinks that the bad effect of sugar and because sugar has empty calories. What I'm saying is no. Actually, there are a lot of things that do have empty calories that are not necessarily poisons. Poison, he said, because of too much sugar that's in our body. So let's look at that. Sugar is made up of two molecules, one called glucose, here blue, another fructose in red. They are separated in our gut. The glucose circulates throughout our body, feeding our muscles and our brain. But goes right to our liver, and it's in the liver where all kind of problems begin. When you metabolize fructose in excess, your liver has no choices but turn that energy into liver fat, and that liver fat then causes all of the downstream metabolic disease. We'll tell you more about disease in a moment. But first, let's talk about your brain. Too much fructose, say Lustig, shut down the part of your brain that tell you you're full. It doesn't get registered by the brain as you having eaten. So if you take a kid and prep him a soft drink, then let him loose at fast food restaurant, that he eats less or that he eats more. It turns out he eats more. I think there's a long way to go before the literature is sorted out. Philip Talaka speaks for the biggest food company in Canadian. She doesn't buy Louis' theory and doesn't think consumers should either. I think it's more important that we step back and look at how we do look for ways to educate and help consumers fit sugar into a healthy dietary pattern. But the industry sure doesn't make it easy. Look at this breakfast bar. There's sugar near the top of the ingredient list. There's 4 more sweeteners. Did you know that chemically they're all the same? Then there's this tomato soup. Who knew it would have added sugar too? How is a consumer supposed to know that healthy old tomato soup has 3.5 teaspoons of sugar in a cup? Well, that's how you figure it out. My nutrition fact table. I figured that out because I spent a lot of time learning about what a gram of sugar is and how to read this label. Do you think most people would know to do that? In the last couple of years, we engaged with Healthy Canadian on campaign called Nutrition Facts Education Campaign, in a large part as commitment to have Canadians understand how to go in the grocery store to make informed choices. But surely there's no way to warn people who might interested in this that cup of this soup brings you 3.5 teaspoons of sugar. To what end though? Well, if they have decided as part of their healthy diet they want to eat less sugar, well, let me see. Then they would use these same labels. The only information on this label is 14 grams of sugar in a half a cup. Do you know what that means? You shouldn't have to be dietitian to figure out how much added sugar you are eating, but it helps. Pretend child has up all sugar Jotan eat in a week. It's pretty scarce. This is your week's worth sugar intake then. It's equivalent to 245 teaspoons of sugar. That's a lot of sugar. Well, when we come back, what all excess sugar might be leading to? That's 2 grams of sugar. Having discovered just how much sugar in their diet, Preden family is on a purge. Okay, the crusty Italian has 1 gram of sugar in this one. They are still surprised at all kind of products that contain sugar, but they are also determined all of it how it goes. Of course, they still have to eat, so to have them learn about life goes beyond processed food. We've made them a deal. For 3 weeks, they all provide all of their meals professionally made without any added sugars. They'll stick to a diet and submit to medical tests. Lucky Charms aren't so lucky anymore. They're only in their mid-20s, but according to medical standards, both Zolatan and Anna are technically obese. 5-year-old Ruby is already on the edge. We're starting our experiment by having their blood tests and analyzed by obesity specialist Dr. Dan. The family, he says, is heading for trouble. Looking at these results, I would say I'm very concerned. Quite frankly, if they don't make meaningful change to their life relatively soon, there are a higher chance that they're heading for a life of low quality of life and early death. Like most of us, getting fatter and sicker, the pregnant might be forgiven their nutritional ignorance, but the food industry has known and discarded link between processed food and disease for decades. It was Minneapolis 1999. Obesity was one of emerging problems back then, when the head of America's biggest food companies arrived for a rare meeting. Among them the head of Kraft, Nabisco, Nestle, Coca-Cola, and General Mills. These are executives who normally are fighting each other for space on grocery stores. They don't get together very often, but in 1990s they got together to talk about obesity. Reporter and author Michael Moss he described the Minneapolis meeting in his best-selling book. and they have been pulled together by a cable of insiders within industries who had increasingly become concerned about both industries' responsibility for and capability for being blamed for obesity. They gathered at the company headquarters, 31st floor. The message they got was uncompromising. It was delivered by two of their own, Michelle March, a top executive at Kraft, and Jim Hill, a leading nutrition researcher. In a slide presentation obtained by Fifth Estate, the two men gave it to the bosses straight. A national epidemic. There are too many warning must hold them before drawing a parallel design to make them uncomfortable. Tobacco company had recently settled a massive lawsuit in face of evidence their product caused disease. Does the food industry, he asked, want to be next? If anyone in the food industry ever doubt there is slippery slope out there, I imagine they are beginning this thing sleeping session right now. What are the health implications of this? Studies show that obese industry are at a higher risk of developing chronic disease such as diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, and cancer. Topping the list are contributing factor, the expensive food testing, supersized, energy-dense foods. In other words, the very food the CEO were in charge of selling. The two men were hoping for money to study the link between food and obesity. Instead, they got tangled, starting with Stephen Sager, head of General Mills. He rather furious that Mills bring this to them and blame them for this. His defense was, look, we already offer consumers a choice. If they want low fat this or low fat that, they, uh, they have those products in grocery store. We feel we already being responsible for both consumers and from a health perspective, but also to Wall Street. In other words, they didn't want to know. Now it's wanting to silence troubled voices in the old company. Michelle must eventually left the food industry out of frustration. But people who profit from sugar, have proven themselves very adept at crushing dissentient voices everywhere, including in the whole of science. In front of us, day by day are increasingly more and more tempting food. His name is John Joskin, a prestigious nutritionist who in 1970 wrote a book the sugar industry did not like, Pure White and Deadly, worth of decade research according to his son, that Michel, that led Joskin to what then controversial conclusion. He started to wonder, and late in the 1950s, whether sugar might be a culprit in the increase in heart disease. More significant than fat, which was previous opinion of the time. Certainly more significant than fat, certainly more significant than fat, but that sugar also involved in a number of undesirable conditions, particularly diabetes and obesity. He would later be exposed as having funded by the industry, but not before he helped destroy John Juskin's reputation. As early as 1950s, he had started producing publications suggesting that dietary fat was a problem. Award-winning science writer, Gray told, he successfully managed Haitian Juki with his smell. There was a scientific campaign that discredited or ignored his work. Because of the action of sugar industry in 70s, virtually no research was funded. You have this idea that if you study sugar, you like Yuki, and his were a quack. That's remarkable. I mean, You are saying its scientific investigation into link between sugar and disease ground to a halt. It's week one of the fish test sugar. The Brennan are getting a cooking lesson. Sesame is teaching them the real food. All fruit and vegetable and grains of healthy diet can also be fast and delicious without added any sugar at all. They use specific ingredients that will change up and that will lower the sugar and lower the processed food in their diet. And that may prove a good thing because after decades of silence, there was new scientific research linking sugar and all kinds of chronic disease. Jonathan Blood work suggests he may on the edge of getting one. His results suggest that he's pre-diabetic, that his level has been high, and that if we don't make some changes to his lifestyle soon, diabetes is coming. Today in North America, it's estimated more than 100 million people are diabetic or pre-diabetic. So I can actually categorize to say to you that sugar is. His data come from his own study, done over a decade comparing diabetes rate in 175 countries with people diabetes.